Yeah.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another installment of our visiting lecture series of the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies here at the University of Macau. It's great to see you all today, both in the room and those of you joining us online. Today, I have the honor of introducing to you Professor Carlo Penco, who is currently Professor of Philosophy at the University of Genoa, historically has studied at Oxford with the late and great Sir Michael Dummett, has published and edited several volumes on the works of philosophers in that 20th century analytic tradition, among them Michael Dummett, John Austin, Gottlob Frege, Hilary Putnam, Donald Davidson, Saul Kripke, and many others. He's also published various articles in journals such as Philosophia, Theoria, and others as well, and has held a number of posts throughout his ongoing career, among them a position teaching philosophy of science at the University of Salento and visiting positions at the Pittsburgh Center for the Philosophy of Science and the London Institute of Philosophy. Today, Professor Penco is here to present to us a work by the title Fake News and the Dark Side of Speech. It would be a great help for me if you all joined me in welcoming our visitor before I hand things off.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me thank Dave for inviting me. And also thanks Nevia that probably suggested my name. Therefore, if you don't like the talk, Nevia is to blame. If you like the talk, it's all right. Well, I will just follow what I have written on the slides so that you can follow better my talk. Just a worry. My face is very different from the one you have seen in the presentation, but I swear, I am him. I am the same person. So don't worry. Now I begin to share. Okay. Is that all right?
Not
Am I sharing?
we see
Not
you,
yet?
we hear you, but we don't yet see your slides
Wait.
before.
Share. Well,
Yeah, okay. There we go.
okay.
Now we
It's fine.
see we see.
You
Okay,
see.
great. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. My talk is divided in five parts: absolute freedom of speech, fake news as actions, the implicit dimension, which is a proper dark side, the beliefs in fake news and the problem of indirect hate speech, and open problems. First, is sensible to speak of absolute freedom of speech? Few months before buying Twitter, Elon Musk, the US billionaire you probably know, wrote, "Sorry to be a free speech absolutist." And buying Twitter to make it its own social network as X, he wrote, "It is very important for there to be an inclusive arena for free speech." These two ideas sounds good. I mean, it seems that they express two traditional ideas. First, everybody must have a freedom to express their thoughts, against the obligation to print something only after having permission from the state or the church, as it happened in the Middle Ages in Europe. So the first point is good. Second, on the long run, in the arena of ideas, truth will win. And this is a very traditional idea. John Stuart Mill, the founder of liberal thought in Great Britain, in his book on liberty said, "Wrong opinions gradually yield to fact and argument." But there are problems, on these two principles. First, freedom to express thoughts has some worries. Speech is not only expression of thought, but it is a kind of action. First, we can assert the force to persuade people to act for our gain. Second, we can offend people, incite people to do harm, just not only expressing the thought. Every time we speak, we express our thought, but we do something at the same time. Now, after Cambridge Analytica scandal, I don't know if you remember when Facebook used a lot of personal data of the users to support Brexit and to support the election of Trump in 2016. It was a real scandal. European Union defined a code of practice of disinformation. And this code defined disinformation as verifiable false or misleading information. And freedom of speech does not mean freedom for accountability. Second, even John Locke, who was one of the first to speak of freedom, said that freedom only exists under common rules. Without rules, there is no freedom. It's just the law of jungle. And even John Stuart Mill wrote that there are limits of freedom. Limits of freedom are admissible to prevent harm to others. And this is called, among scholars, the harm principle. When you listen to harm principle, they refer to John Stuart Mill limitation of freedom. And after many killings due to white supremacy propaganda, European Union developed a strategy against hate speech. And the main principle of the European Union legislation is what is illegal offline is illegal also online. But what about application of the code of practice of disinformation? I make an example. During the 2020 election, Twitter, following the European code, signed what was fake news with an alert. This claim is disputed. You see here a post by Trump on Twitter. Trump does not say, but report something other who said. Dominion deleted it to 7 million Trump votes, blah, 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 and then passed vote from Trump to Biden. But if you look carefully at the bottom of this post, of this tweet, you read this claim about election fraud is disputed. It is a very kind way to say it's false. It was demonstrated false, and Dominion, in a lawsuit, received $800 million for people who wrote this false fact, well, this falsity. Well, after Mark took Twitter, calling it X, the warning disappeared. So the same post now does not have any more. This claim is disputed, and people may believe it. The second point was truth will win in the arena of ideas. Just give it time. But what is the arena of ideas? There are two traditional Western paradigms of arena of ideas. It's fine? Sorry?
Yeah, we can see.
You can see, you can hear well.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. The two paradigms of arena of ideas come one from the founding of democracy in Greek polis, the square of Athens, where people debated in order to take a decision. And the second paradigm is the gladiators arena in the Roman Colosseum, where the strongest win. Now, which of the paradigm of arena of ideas are we going to follow? Well, It looks like Elon Musk had the second idea when he said Twitter is a war zone. If somebody gonna jump in the war zone, it's like, okay, you are in the area, let's go, let's fight. Well, this is the arena like gladiators arena. The idea of political discourse as gladiators arena has at least three problems. First, searching for truth is a collective enterprise and not a challenge between two fighters. Second, in social networks, fake news is shared more frequently than correct information. There are a lot of studies about that. Third, there is no balance when someone has more power than other in presenting their viewpoint. I comment on this third aspect. John Stuart Mill said wrong opinions gradually yield to fact and argument, but also said fact and argument, to produce any effect on the mind, must be brought before it. This is the main point. When social network use its algorithms to share millions of pieces of fake news, let us say wrong opinions, you take any post shared by Musk. Musk has 200 million followers. Any post, the most stupid, has at least 1 million views. And in this way, you hide correct information, fact and argument following Mill. Therefore, most often in some social networks, fact and arguments do not reach the mind of the user because they are overwhelmed of other kind of opinions, most often wrong. Now, we have, concluding this part of freedom of speech, two different attitudes in the United States and Europe. At the moment, the United States allows freedom of speech irregarding of the consequences with no restriction at all. In Europe, given legal protection to privacy, and there is a fight against disinformation and fight against hate speech. And I take last minutes to enter a small point about Australia. In Australia, they have a safety codes that fight against online age inappropriate material. I just studied this aspect a few days ago, and in 2024, the Safety Commissioner Julie Grant asked X to remove videos of stabbing of a Christian bishop from the damaging impact may have on children, of young people. Then X reacted, say it was unavailable only for Australian, because X argued that the video did not meet the benchmark of extreme violence material. I went to X, I watched the video. Certainly, there is no splatter. It is not like Hollywood terrible stuff, but it is real. It is a report of something happening. It is really terrible knowing that it is not a fake. It is a real stuff. The curious and the terrible things that the boy in Britain that stabbed 3 girls watched this video just before stabbing 3 girls. And funny enough, Marx supported the far-right riots in UK following the stabbing of this boy, saying civil war is inevitable. So Marx supported the riots developed after a boy has seen a video he permitted to stay on X, and that's finished the circle. It's something really worrying. So concluding, first, speech is not only expression of thoughts, but a kind of action. And action are accountable and should be blocked if there is evidence of intended cheating or intended harm or harm for youngsters. Second, freedom of speech requires reciprocity, possibility of a dialogue and collaboration. And when there is too much asymmetry and unbalance, there is no harmony, and freedom just becomes power to impose your view. Or invade the world with a lot of piece of fake news. This is an introduction of what is happening today about freedom of speech. Now, I go a bit more philosophical with a lot of examples. But given that I don't know if everybody in the audience is a philosopher, I take the liberty to introduce some philosophical concepts, very simple. The idea of speech act, an example of basic kind of speech act. Think of a girl going to the supermarket. The girl has a list. Let us think of a shopping list like milk, eggs, as a list of orders. This list is a kind of milk by milk, eggs by eggs. This is what a list is, a series of orders of something we have to do. Let us imagine that a jealous husband asks a detective to follow her wife in the supermarket to understand what she is buying because he is not sure of what's going on. And the detective will write what she's buying. A detective writing what she's buying will end up with the same kind of list. Meat, eggs, but this list is different. The list is a list of assertion, a description of fact. Milk is identical as unbought milk. Eggs stands for unbought egg. The two lists represent two kinds of speech acts. The difference is, in this case is the direction of fit. In the first, the word changes depending on language. In the second, language changes depending on the word. I mean, the word changes because the list ordered the girl to take things for supermarket, and then the supermarket will be without a bottle of milk, without a pack of eggs. In the second, seeing what happened in the world, the detective writes down a report. So he has to follow what happened in the world. Now, following the work of Frege and Wittgenstein that we leave on the background, John Longshore Austin defined different aspects inside the action of speaking, or speech acts. Speech acts has three different levels: the form and the content of a speech act, the locutionary aspect, the kind of action performed, uttering a sentence, the illocutionary aspect, the force of the speech act, and the consequences of that action, the perlocutionary aspect. Now let us understand fake news under the kind of action performed uttering a sentence. I give just a general schema you may follow from top to bottom. We make an utterance. It may concern the truth or not. It may be a piece of news or not. I mean, private remarks, claims about history are not news. And a piece of news may be true or may lack truth. A piece of news lacking truth may be either false or misleading. You see here, under fake news, under false and misleading, on the left part, there are truthful false and truthful misleading. What does it mean? A reporter, a journalist, can make a mistake, and it is sincere. So it is not fake news when a reporter makes a mistake. You need intention to deceive or disregard for truth. And also misleading, you may sincerely write something, but at the same time selecting what you write, hiding other more relevant news. And this is a kind of misleading, the framing of the information. But when there is intention to deceive a disregard for truth, we have what is called fake news. Now, fake news, as we've seen, are a kind of assertion. They are description normally, reports. The main problem with assertion is, first, assertion is intended to tell the truth. Believing what you say is true is a, Austin say, felicity condition. is a characteristic of speaking that people who speaks believes what he says. We agree about this basic principle. But people may lie, and here enters the dark side. People may lie exactly because our shared attitude toward the first principle, that people believe what they say. But there is also another aspect. There are modes of asserting depending on personality of the speaker. There are expressive personalities, spontaneous, assertive, simple. People of the folk, they keep listeners in a state of openness and trust in the speaker's sincerity and authenticity, and induce a complete acceptance of the content of the message. Well, there are many examples. The most famous example is the well-known present president of the United States. When he speaks, is just like one of us, one of the people. Is just say something in a very fluent way. It looks authentic. And a Swedish philosopher remarked that with the recent ascent of Donald Trump, the world has seen another political example of the success of expressive personality. Despite an astonishing record of 1,318 fake or misleading assertions between 2017 and 2019, in a recent poll, 42% of the people asked perceived Trump as honest. The result merits mention in the history of assertion. Peter Pagin has done a lot of study about assertion, about the speech act of assertion. And we have to say, beside the honesty, people think authenticity. He was an actor. He knows how to pretend to be authentic like one of us. One of the best definitions of fake news that leaves aside the misleading news is deliberate presentation of a verifiable false news on the internet by mimicking the format of traditional news or normative professional journalism. This is a recent paper who collected something like hundreds of definitions of fake news. And in front of the abundance of fake news and of expressive personality, we need something very important, what is called epistemic vigilance. There is a lot of work among philosophers on this concept. Epistemic vigilance consists in critical evaluation, on the one hand, on the content of the news. And you have to understand the competence of the reporters about what they say. If they are not competent, the content is not to trust. And the source of the news, the kind of journal, the kind of newspaper, the kind of news site, the kind of social network, and the honesty of the reporter as a news site. In front of any piece of news, you have just to keep epistemic vigilance. If not, you are just fooled. But there are many ways of telling a lie, not just telling a lie. We may just tell a lie without people understanding it. And here enter the third part, the most important part of my talk, the implicit dimension. And here we are entering the dark side of speech. And here too I have to introduce in an elementary way some philosophical concepts through examples. We have seen Austin idea of speech acts. Every time we speak, we do some kind of act. And even assertion is a kind of act. But we use also shortcuts to simplify our communication. For instance, a basic principle is giving for granted what everybody knows. when I began this talk, I did not say something like, my talk will use the internet connection, uses the system team provided by our institution, the software that help people from different sides of the world to hear and watch presentation, and let the speaker use a PowerPoint, an original Microsoft program while staying at home, blah, blah, blah. No, but in saying, here is the plan of my talk, I gave all this stuff for granted because together with many other things, because we are in this small conversation, share a lot of knowledge, a lot of things we take for granted. This least, but many other things we might take for granted. Therefore, I suggest to use the idea of Robert Stornacker. Robert Stornacker called what everybody knows, or what is shared among participants in a conversation, in this case us, common ground. We have a common ground. Each of us has some particular belief and knowledge that do not share with others, but we have a common ground. And let us call presupposition the beliefs that are taken for granted in the common ground. Now, many expressions may be an implicit reminder to presupposition belonging to the common ground, and they are called presupposition triggers. And pragmatics today does a lot about this presupposition trigger, classifying them and studying them. For instance, Pia regrets not having studied enough. What does it presuppose? Well, Pia did not study enough. I do not say Pia did not study enough. I say Pia regrets not having studied enough. And if I say Pia stopped smoking, what does presuppose? I want an answer from the audience. No answer?
Stop smoking. Oh, anymore. She was a smoker.
Yeah, right. Pia used to smoke. She was a smoker. It's a presupposition. It's not said. Pia returned to Macau. Presuppose Pia has been to Macau before. Before Pia got married, she was very shy. Presuppose Pia got married. I don't say. I just presuppose Pia before got married. Now, what happens if I propose something that does not belong to the common ground? For instance, I tell you, I stopped smoking. I, Carlo, stopped smoking. That I used to smoke does not belong to our shared common ground. I know you didn't. Nobody knew that I used to smoke. Yet now, I suppose, you give for granted that I used to smoke in the past. Because having stopped smoking means that I was a smoker. Here is the point. Often, for the sake of simplicity and for shortening the discourse, we give it for granted something that does not belong to the common ground. Yet, the presupposition comes into existence, as Lewis said in a wonderful paper. That is, the presupposition that I used to smoke enters the common ground silently and with no effort, as it always had been part of the common ground. This process of letting presupposition entering the common ground is called by Lewis accommodation. Something is accommodated inside the common ground without people noticing, it just enters. Or now, using presupposition, enrich our knowledge, avoiding irrelevant data, giving a lot for granted, and it is one of the most marvelous aspects of the working of human language. Simplifies, helps, but it has a dark side. That is, it may be used for cheating, it may provoke harm. And this is a topic of the book I have written, published last year. That's some of promotion. Examples are many. I make only one to give the idea. The 2020 US elections were very, very correct. But Trump didn't like to lose. He continued to invent fake cases of machine stealing votes, who has been demonstrated false. And then he needed to persuade people and invented a wonderful slogan. And the slogan was, "Stop the steal." and it was everywhere. Every American used "Stop the Steal." Now, well, there is something wrong. You hear my clock sounds 11. It should be 6 o'clock.
Sounds okay from our end. Yeah.
Okay.
Continue.
Now, if you hear us "Stop the steal," you are brought to presuppose there is something to be stopped. The steal. It's a presupposition. The presupposition to stop is a presupposition trigger. This presupposition became part of the common ground among Trump followers. And what is common ground is not debated. It is accepted as given. That's the main point of presuppositions. And hundreds or thousands of violent posts emerged based on the presupposition that the election was rigged, that there was a steal. And they attacked the Congress of United States. Accommodating a fake presupposition in the common ground has, as you see, very serious consequences. I made my point of the danger of presupposition, but wait a moment. Philosophers would say, when we speak of implicit dimension of language, we typically link it to Grice's idea of conventional implicatus, and you have spoken of presupposition, right? I wanted to say something about implicatus. Grice was a genius. His main idea was there is a difference between what is explicitly said, what you say, and what is communicated. And what is communicated through what you say depends on context. And I make a very simple example. Given a short definition before, difference between presupposition and implicatus. Presupposition is what is taken for granted. Shared presupposition in the common ground. Implicatus is what we intend to communicate that can be derived from presupposition and from what is said. So we take this distinction. Presuppositions are in the back. Implicatures are forward, what comes after. I make an example. Pia stopped smoking. It presupposes Pia used to smoke. And what does it implicate in a conversation? What does it mean that the implicature depend on context? What do I want to communicate saying Pia stopped smoking? Well, it depends on context. Let us see. I say Pia stopped smoking in the context of a group of friends, health fanatics. All my friends are like to drink juice fruit, health food. In this context, I mean, Pia will participate to our happy hours. Now she has stopped smoking, therefore, now she will be with us. She'll be more healthy. But in the context of a group of heavy smokers, with meat just smoking and chatting, if I say Pia stopped smoking, in that context, I might mean Pia will abandon us, will never come with us, never more come with us discussing, because she stopped smoking. Do you see, saying the same word, Pia stopped smoking, I may communicate two different ideas following different contexts in which I speak. I make this schema to help memorizing this idea. I say Pia stopped smoking. There is implicit presupposition and implicit implicatures. The implicit presupposition here, Pia used to smoke, and the presupposition might be Pia will be with us if in health fanatic context, or Pia will abandon us in a nicotine addicted context. But let us take this idea in contemporary situation, in more political one, let us say. Have you seen this meeting at the White House where that elegant white girl is Paula White, Trump evangelic pastor, that put this picture in her Instagram post, and it was at the inauguration of the faith office of the White House. Now, Paula White has been very relevant for supporting Trump. And let's go back to her 2016 address for the new president elected in 2016. She said, "We have to fight demonic rings that allies themselves against the purpose of President Trump." What does it mean? What does it presuppose? What does she want to communicate? Let us take the same schema as before. What I say, it was implicitly communicated. I say, let us fight satanic rings. Implicit presupposition is there are satanic rings. Satanic rings exist, maybe in a metaphor, but there is something to fight. But what I want to communicate, which is the implicatory? Well, in this talk, implicitly, she wants to say God will help Trump. We have to help Trump fighting against something bad. And it is something that resonates in the Christian evangelic churches. There's something against satanic stuff. We have to work for God. But on the other hand, it may say that Trump will support QAnon because QAnon had a conspiracy alt-right, a conspiracy idea for which there are satanic pedophilic rings in the Congress, organized by Hillary Clinton and other people in the Congress. It was too extreme, and evangelical Christians would not accept that. It was too much. So you say two different things depending on the context of the audience, of the context of the receivers. And this is what people now call dog whistle. It is like a dog whistle because only dogs can hear that, while other people don't hear what you mean. Therefore, you implicitly say different things to different group of people with the same words, presupposing the same stuff. And here arrives the dark side. Implicatures are another way to simplify the conversation. It's a wonderful way to communicate, but first, you may tell the truth and imply the false. You may use dog whistle and to hide the worst. You may offend, provoke harm, make damages, free for any responsibility or accountability because you can cancel what you communicated, just saying, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that. I finish this part with a point on the first of these three ideas because it is most difficult to understand. You may tell the truth and imply the false. All lives matter. All lives are important. Who could disagree with that? I mean, in a Christian environment where all are a son and daughter of God, or in a Buddhist environment, all lives matter. You cannot go against that. It is true. It is accepted by almost everybody. But what happens that all lives matter, go home, get a job? If all lives matter, be kind. The solution is in the blackboard below. You see that there is a all written in red over the word black. Black lives matter. Writing all instead of over black, it making a contrast. Saying all lives matter in the context of the debate on Black Lives Matter, which is something emerged after the killing of many black people, suggests a contrast. And if Black Lives Matter should be interpreted as only Black Lives Matter, they want to be special, but that is false. Therefore, saying something true, you imply something false. You imply that people saying Black Lives Matter intended to say only Black Lives Matter. But the slogan was intended to claim also Black Lives Matter, which is the contrary. The lesson is saying something true you may suggest something false or misleading. And we have to take a stop for a moment and to enter the fourth part of my talk. We have passed 40 minutes almost, and I have to go a bit quick, but this might be simple because just an example. I go more on example now, very quickly. 2012, St. Duke Elementary School was in Newton, Connecticut, US. It is not far from New York, in the Connecticut. It happened that a man opened fire inside the school, killing 26 people, and was here example of youngster just protected. But after a while, parents of the killed children began receiving a death threat. What was going on? The context. There is a fight between Democrats who support more gun control and Republicans who want more freedom to wear guns. Now there is a website, a news site, InfoWars, that began to write that Obama planned gun control before this tragedy. The InfoWars is an alt-right news site that claims while other networks lie to you about what's happening now, InfoWars tell you the truth about what's happening next. And it gains a lot of money through its store, really a lot of money. Now, the first things InfoWars began to say that the United States used this event to promote gun control. And after a while, they begin to describe the killings as a false flag operation by the government to justify restriction on gun ownership. And Alex Jones, the owner of this news site, claimed the families grieving over their loss were actors paid by the government. Their children were anything but dead. Nobody died at St. Duke. Wow. And the readers of InfoWars believed with the fake story. And they became very angry by the parents and began to attack personally many of them, tormenting and filming their residence, telling them to their faces their grief was a lie, sending death threats like, you're gonna die, death is coming to you really soon, mean to you real soon because you faked the death of your son. Look behind you, it is death. And asking them to see the bodies of the dead children. Can you imagine the tragedy of these people? And so on. Alex Jones' claims were demonstrably false. Parents were not actors, children died. And a process followed. Alex Jones went to this process and eventually recognized that the fact was real and said that he was under US law freedom of speech. Well, it's freedom of speech. I say something and I was free to say it because we have freedom of speech. But they showed that he knew, he was aware that the fact was real. And this was very relevant for the process. The claim that Sandy Hook massacres was staged is a perfect example of the definition of fake news. Deliberate presentation of verifiably false news on the internet by mimicking the format of traditional news, exactly is a news site, or normative professional journalism. Fake news is bad information, not hate speech. However, fake news is dangerous because it can create hate speech and harm people. And we may speak in this case of indirect or mediated hate speech. Certainly, the news site did not present hate speech, but it compelled his readers to hate these people. Well, I skip this. It was just locutionary, per locutionary. I leave the details. I wanted to leave you some open problems to help the discussion. Now, why do people believe in fake news? Well, the first answer is irrationality. There is a long tradition of study of bounded rationality. We we are not properly rational. We follow heuristics and fall into biases. Confirmation bias inside echo chambers, self-filtered bubbles. All this study made by Kahneman of slow and fast thinking. If you think fast, you fall in bias. If you read a newspaper, if you read a piece of news, you believe it immediately, risk to be wrong. But not everybody say that we believe in fake news because we are irrational. They made a lot of tests of people apparently believing in fake news, and they were not irrational at all. They uh, followed some test of analyticity, analytic thinking, and they were perfect. So sometimes say people believe in fake news for motivated reasoning. They reason under some goals. You assess information to your specific goals. You want to keep up with friends. And then there is a way in which you are not irrational because it's better to keep a relation with your friends and follow some news shared by your friends, for instance. And there is a problem in this case. The more extremely false a piece of news is, the more the group hangs together. I mean, conspiracy groups like QAnon are really like addicts because they are out of the normal society and they feel to hang together to these horrible ideas. But this is a dangerous consequence of motivated reasoning. And we may say, I say, one of the main problems is that social networks, where fake news are mostly shared, have been invented for fun. Facebook was born as a list of the best girls in college. It's really ridiculous that it became so important. And social network become an echo of fake news taken from many sites. I mean, all posts from by Trump came from this news site, this other news site, and going into social network became more and more relevant. But now social network, therefore, are used as means of information, a source of information. And there is an unclear boundary between fun and information. What comes first? What comes later? What is more important? And it is very easy to start with fun and to end with disinformation. And that's the danger of social networks, any kind of social networks. And beside epistemic vigilance, I am concluding my talk, how can we avoid believing in fake news? First, epistemic vigilance on the content and on the source. But research shows that discussion often prompts more partisanship. They are not useful for helping avoiding fake news. They help maybe strengthening the opposite side. But maybe serene exchange of ideas may help. And I hope the serene exchange of ideas that happened in the university may help to uh, go away from believing in fake news. Thank you.
Well, we have microphones positioned around the rooms. People want to ask a question, just make sure you turn the microphone from red to green. I can start establishing a queue now. Anybody online who wants to jump in should feel free to use the raise hand function as well. Try to keep things orderly. Luke, you wanted to start us off?
As usual.
Go ahead with the microphone there.
All right, can you hear me all right? Do we have audio? Yes? Can you hear us?
You're currently muted.
Yes, I can hear.
Very good, very good.
No,
All right,
not very well, but I can hear.
Okay, I'll just get closer to it. So, one, thank you for your talk. This is terrific. It's as an American, it's very fun to go back and look back on these things, having lived through them now, and understand more about how we can establish a theory of fake news. I really appreciate this. The question I wanted to ask you pertains to how fake news was handled prior to the advent of social media. For example, Holocaust denial is a common understanding of sort of spreading fake news about a certain given event that engaged much more with scholars in bad faith or in good faith, trying to come to reasonable conclusions about the history involved of the facticity of certain events. How might we look at things like people trying to police speech with regards to Holocaust denial as maybe a guideline for how we can address things like free speech absolutism and misinformation or fake news in our modern sort of context?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I didn't follow everything because the audio is not perfect, but
Okay.
I may say something and then you may just specify better. Well, fake news has been always existed. I mean, the first fake news, for instance, is in Athens in the fight with Sparta. They accused Sparta of spreading disease, while disease arrived in the port of Athens by chance. And the term fake news arrived especially during end of 18th century, beginning of 19th century, in yellow journalism. Yellow journalism was called exaggerated news and also fake news. And this development of fake news compelled journalism to change. And Pulitzer invented the control fact-checked department. Since I don't remember the year, but since the 30s, the main newspapers had fact-checked groups to control fake news and asked readers to denounce fake news. So this is something relevant. Traditional journalism reacted against fake news with internal check of fake news. Obviously, rich journals could do that. For instance, Associated Press has a strong group of fact-checking, and it is the first to denounce what is fake and what is not normally. But the term fake news was abandoned. It came again when with social networks. Silverman, a Canadian journalist, if I don't mistake, began to use the term fake news for people who use it to spread the news just for having people going to their site to earn money. So the second step of development of the concept of fake news arrived with social networks. I did not get the event that you referred to, and then I cannot answer to the second part of your question. The question whether fake news existed before social network, certainly they did. There has been a reaction, and then we have a new development of fake news with social network because of the number and because of the pretension to be like real journalism when it is not. But the second aspect of your question, I didn't get it.
Right, sorry, I have a microphone now. Hopefully this works. Can you hear me all right?
Okay. My question was, I guess I'll just restate it briefly. I'll rephrase it then. I'm interested in the application of the scholastic lessons learned in the fight against Holocaust denial, and how that might be applied to combating fake news today.
Do you mean the idea the Holocaust is a fake? Because, I mean, there has been in the alt-right environment a new term, holo-hoax, a new description of the fact that Holocaust was a hoax. And this was something new. There always has been criticism of Holocaust, but this new trend is stronger and takes much more spread. I don't know if this you are referring to.
Yes, that's what I'm interested in.
Yes,
So,
yes. There are, on the one hand, there are new collection of reviews, journals and books on the fake of Holocaust, demonstrating in details why Holocaust did not happen. And there is a spread on holo-hoax everywhere in alt-right environment. And what is new, not now, new since some years, that the American Ku Klux Klan, which was fundamentally against the black people, has become a mixture of aggression of black people and Jewish. And they attack Jewish because Jewish are intended to run the world, because they help immigrants and so on. So there is a link of many alt-right connection from the Holocaust to the criticism of immigration. So there is a direct link of Jewish people help immigrants, therefore we have to kill Jewish people, and so on. So this is a large part of what is spreading around, mainly in the United States and in Great Britain, and also in France. And this is very, very dangerous. And Elon Musk helped indirectly this development with his X.
thank you much. Thank you.
Okay, I see now Professor Muller would like to jump in from the Teams chat there.
You, Ben. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a little lag. I'm not sure whose end it's on, but you're pretty clear.
Okay, thanks. First of all, sorry, Professor Penco, I was late. I hope it's okay that I still ask a question, even though I did not hear your presentation in full. My question is actually, thanks a lot for the interesting presentation. I'm interested in the topic because I work on the German sociologist Niklas Luhmann, who has a very peculiar theory on media and in particular on news. And from his perspective, which I share, there is a certain problem with the concept of fake news. Because the concept of fake news, like everything, has a lot of implications, which you also mentioned in your presentation. And the main implication of fake news is probably that there is also true news, and that news should be as true as possible and ideally purely true. That's kind of the implication that the news should be all about and could and should be all about pure truth. So there is this kind of normative implication. Now, but if we look at the actuality, the reality of news, at least from a sociological and communication theory perspective, we find that merely being true does not really make anything newsworthy on its own. It's just a kind of a relatively minor condition. For instance, the fact that you just gave your presentation will not probably report it in the news, not even in Macau, but it's true. So this shows that actually, in order for something to become news, other selectors are much more relevant. And then something merely being true. This is just a necessary, but by no means sufficient condition. So doesn't the very concept of fake news already somehow kind of imply a certain concept of what news are that kind of obstructs the understanding of what news are?
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Let me recollect some ideas. First, I have presented a schema of news as a kind of assertion. Distinguish news need to be public, not private conversation. Our is some kind of private conversation in a small group. News are something that need to be public. Second, fake news normally need to have something true inside the content. It is the traditional definition of disinformation, or it began with the Russian disinformatia. The main principle of disinformation is put something true and work on that. So if you follow every kind of a good fake news, you always find some connection with the reality, verifiable, and then a deformation of this connection. And this is very important because it's a way in which fake news enter the mind of the believers. Third, well, somebody suggested to avoid the term fake news because it has too many definitions. Even the definition I have given avoids speaking of misleading news and spoke only of false news. A fake news may be true and misleading. But from the point of view of definition, I think we may use the term fake news keeping this vagueness, like we might say family resemblance predicate, as Wittgenstein I would say. We cannot give an exact necessary or sufficient condition of fake news. There will be always something which does not work. But we can understand what fake news is, even if we don't have a precise definition on which everybody agrees. We will use some or some other depending on the environment in which you are speaking. But the relation with the truth is really relevant. And as I said, you may present a fake news even saying something completely true. And this is another aspect. But normally, there is always some truth inside the fake news. If not, it's difficult to accept. Even the most absurd fake news like the demoniac pedophiliac ring of the Democrats has some connection with something really happening, like a letter, a text, an event, on which you may build up something in a devious way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you, because that was very relevant. And I don't know the sociologist you referred to, and I would be happy if you send me the name. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I will.
Okay, we'll go back to the room the moment with Victoria, and then we'll go to Nevia back in the call.
Hello, thank you for the talk. I enjoyed the presentation, and I was intrigued that the emphasis was on the problem of fake news rather than the problem of the perpetrator of fake news. Because it seems to me that if we think of language as a tool, then fake news is just part of the toolkit of language. And it's actually a very effective tool, which is why it's problematic. But the problem then, as I would see it, is in the person using the tool. So how might this fit into your analysis? You talked about the news and you talked about the recipients, but you didn't say very much about the perpetrators.
Thank you very much. That's a really interesting point. I just hinted about the perpetrators. Well, the case I made of the InfoWars who claimed that a terrorist a killing was just staged. In this case, the perpetrator was condemned and had to pay a lot of money. The perpetrators of fake news can be judged only in a specific case when it is clear they intended to cheat and they knew that what they said was false. And it happened in many cases. It happened with when the people react. Only happens when an institution on an agency reacts. For instance, the Dominion company, who was accused to steal votes, reacted and entered in a trial and won. But it was a company, something with money to pay lawyers. And for normal people, it's more difficult. But at the same time, it happened a few times in the United States that many people reacted against fake news that had a very bad effect on them. Just people accused it. But you need just to organize people together to react against the perpetrators of fake news. And when the perpetrator of fake news is at the top, like the top of the social networks, it is very difficult to react. It's really, there is a problem of power here. But for specific case, when you can verifiably demonstrate that what is said is false, it is intended to deceive it, make harm, you may react with lawyers and other stuff. I think this was the problem you wanted to hear about. Am I correct?
In parts, but at a more philosophical level, I think the essence of the problem is that fake news is an effective tool. And if people have these bad intentions, they're just able to use the tool effectively. So in order to solve that problem, wouldn't you have to somehow break the link between the user and the tool?
How can you break the link between the user and the tools? That language permits this kind of stuff. It has always permitted that. I don't see how to break the link. I mean, this is somehow irresolvable problem because the tool is there, everybody can use it. And I see only good education can avoid people using this tool for spreading fake news. And the actual moment does not help because people are more and more accustomed to watch short videos, to watch stuff with no relevance, and then is less and less prone to be epistemically vigilant. And these make it difficult to break the link between the tools and the possibility to use it in a bad way. So I don't see at the moment an answer to this question. It's a very difficult point, and thank you for having raised it. We have to work on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nevia, you should feel free to jump in.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Carlo, thank you very much. There are so many aspects that I would like to ask your feedback about, but let me just start with this. So I think, maybe I'm a bit pessimistic here, but I think that when we talk about fake news, so when we, for example, ask the question, how to limit fake news on social media, then we use a fake news to mean false statements. Not just false statements, but false statements that are shared on the media with the precise intent to deceive people. But then when we use fake news within the social media context, that is when we, for example, label a statement as a fake news, then we are basically, we are in the speech act domain. So we are trying to convey exactly like the statement that appeared, like this is debatable or it's been debated. In the very same way, what we are saying is that we are judging, we are evaluating something as a false, therefore communicating via like this act of speech to the audience that we know the truth, and that is not a piece of the truth, right? So we are basically helping audience, but we can be also deceiving audience into believing that a certain statement is false if we have the bad intention. Meaning that this label of a fake news can be used for good purposes or bad purposes, depending on the speaker's intention, placing this label of fake news at the same level as any other statement that we want to make on social media. This is a point comment. I do think that epistemic vigilance may be an ideal goal, but that is already say, defeated since the very start, because I think that participants in the social media discussion nowadays, we are like citizens of this large online world, are not in the position of applying any kind of a criterion for epistemic vigilance, given that we are communicators within a very specific context that has very little to share with the physical context of communication, like the kind of context that we were used to when reading a newspaper, or when talking to people, or listening to say a politician giving a talk in a city square. Has nothing to do with the context that we are dealing with when we are talking about online communication online, be it on social media or any other form of online dimension. Because there's really nothing nowadays that can refer to the features of the context of the communication that we were used to in the online world, including the speaker that may have a fake identity, or there may be like a group of people faking the identity of one person. But I mean, all these features that make up the context of the traditional communication context simply cannot be exported into the online communication. So I want to hear from you whether you are more optimistic than me about the value, the significance of epistemic vigilance, which is a hot topic in philosophy today. In my view, it's a waste of time, but just want to hear what you think.
On the first shortly, yes, writing this is fake news can be written also on good news. So you say it's very dangerous. It's a dangerous solution. However, the problem of the code of disinformation in Europe was not only this, was mainly that political parties should declare how much money did they spend on social networks and this kind of stuff, making transparent the work done on social network. This would be very relevant, because we don't have kinds of laws that avoid cheating through elections, and we needed to change that. We have too old laws for understanding what's going on in election. On epistemic vigilance, I am optimistic. I am optimistic, especially when I see a small country in Europe, which is Finland, who invented the idea of fake news in a way, and began to teach what we call in philosophy epistemic vigilance in a more simple way in elementary school, teaching children to distinguish deep fake and normal stuff, and youngsters may be more apt to understand what's going on if we teach them at the beginning, elementary school and so on. So they may manage. Well, these tools are powerful. I don't know the name of who asked the question about the perpetrator of fake news and the use of these linguistic tools. But if you teach at the beginning honesty and understanding of language, and understanding all these tools or these tricks, people begin to take care of what's going on since they are young. And I think education is the answer here. And epistemic vigilance would be something normal for a young boy educated in the right way, not to be fooled by the stupid people using language with this tool, which are too simple and easy also to dismantle. So people will stop believing of everything they hear and they see. And I hope so. I am very optimistic on that. But it takes time.
Thank you. Thank you. If I just very briefly, just to follow up. Well, I agree with you that some kind of training on the tricks that pertain to the way in which language is used is very important to raise the awareness of the audience. But then here we are dealing with the big problem of distinguishing truth from falsity. So I'm not sure that this is really a kind of a goal that it's like, anyway, I don't want to, there is still a few minutes. I don't want to, maybe we can discuss later about this. I want to waste the time of the discussion.
Sorry, very shortly, more than distinguishing truth and falsity, people need to understand the distinction between meaning and truth. If you listen something, you understand the meaning, but this does not mean that it is true. So understanding a piece of news does not mean that piece of news is true. If people learn that everything they read over here, it's understandable, but at the same time, wait before accepting. So one thing is understanding the meaning, another accepting what is said as true. This basic distinction is very fundamental.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go back to Victoria then for a moment.
Hello, it's me again. I'm the one that raised the question about the perpetrator. I haven't been following the debate on epistemic vigilance, but it seems to me that there could be another related concept that people maybe are talking about, or if not, perhaps should be. And that concept is epistemic abstinence. You hear it?
Thank you
Epistemic
very much.
abstinence.
It is exactly what I was saying. Victoria, you pointed a very nice point. It is what I've said, answered in Nevia. When I said we have to distinguish meaning and truth, when I understand a sentence, I understand what it means. I understand that it is true if the facts correspond to the sentence. I understand the truth conditions, but I wait. I wait is just epistemic abstinence. That would be an attitude. Don't judge, wait. At the end, you have to judge. That's the problem. So epistemic abstinence should be a first step, not the final step. Should be a basic step before entering a discussion. That should not be the last. But Victoria, you pointed a very good problem that, well, we have to, again, to work a bit in the years. Epistemic vigilance or epistemic abstinence, or a mixture of the two. Certainly, epistemic abstinence is not avoiding epistemic vigilance, can be working together. That's my impression. But thanks for pointing out the problem.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay, I remember this happened last time we used Teams. It notifies us that call will end in 5 minutes, or that there's only 5 minutes left in the meeting. So I hope that doesn't mean we'll all just be ejected from the call, but in case it does, maybe we can see if somebody has just one quick final question, so that there's enough time for both the question and response. Maybe Nevia, you mentioned you had some unresolved thoughts, and I see nobody else in the queue right now.
Yeah, I had one point. Well, but it's not actually. It was not that focus in your presentation. It was a kind of preliminary topic. It is when you were talking about absolute freedom of speech, and you presented the United States as showcasing this absolute freedom of speech. So just when I was a bit surprised that you would use United States as showcasing absolute freedom of speech, as it seems to me, although this is like my take. I'm not living in the United States. I'm not dealing with everyday communication and requirements in the United States. But from what I get, it seems like, at least in contemporary times, you need to be very careful about selecting your language when talking in a school, on the street. So I wonder what you think about this, and whether this may actually be a counterexample for your labeling United States as the land of the freedom of speech.
You're absolutely right, but the idea of absolute freedom of speech growing now in the United States is first against this attitude of blocking some kind of words, of blocking some kind of expression or some kind of behavior. It's just the reaction against the woke culture. So this absolute freedom of speech is just, on one way, a reaction against that. On the other hand, it is something very dangerous because it is letting everything go. And the example of the reaction of X of leaving the stabbing of a bishop running online it make me think they are not doing the right thing. I mean, the question of child exploitation. Well, there is a lot of stuff of sexualization of children in social networks, and they are not working against that enough because they leave just algorithm instead of people. The first things Musk made in X is firing all the people that use it to control the bad stuff going in the social network, and using only algorithms. In algorithm, you block only apparent stuff, not real bad stuff. So there is two aspects of the freedom of speech. On the one hand, the reaction against what you said, restriction of speech in campus, the woke ideology. On the other hand, the danger of leaving only algorithm and not people to check what's going on.
I'm worried that this will be brought to an abrupt end unless I take this moment to ask us to thank you with a round of applause. I see it's a notification saying Paul might end, so I wanted to avoid an unceremonious. Thank you so much, though, for your time.
Okay, thank you very much for all the questions. Very, very useful, interesting. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.